Okay, so let me get to our program. John Uprichard is our first speaker this morning. He is the CEO of I'm on track, Chris? Okay. Find Great People, providing leadership that has led to more than 2,800% revenue growth and 14 times best place to work since 2002. Recognized as one of America's best recruitment firms by Forbes and named to the Grant Thornton list of South Carolina's top 100 privately held companies ever since the year of 2013. FGP has also appeared 6 times on the Inc. 500 list of fastest growing companies in the United States. FGP exists to build great companies by connecting them with their greatest asset, great people. John is a trustee of Claflin University and a governor-appointed board member at SC Department of Employment and Workforce. He's the former chair of the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, a Liberty Fellow, affiliated with the Aspen Institute Global Leadership Network, and a member of the Young Presidents Organization. John holds a BA in liberal arts from Auburn University. Our liberal arts folks, give him a round of applause. So whether there's any question that a liberal arts degree is of value, John is letting us know that many of our CEOs hold liberal arts degrees, Don. So much for us, right? He's a proud veteran after beginning his professional career as a Navy officer with tours overseas on a submarine and an aircraft carrier. John has some exciting experiences. I look forward to hearing about some of those experiences. But let's give John a round of applause as our first keynote.
So it's an honor to be here with you today. And Benny, I will say, after seeing the jackets, listen to the kids. The jackets look pretty fresh. So, when we got the call from Leah, she said, on our team, she said, hey, will you come speak at the Upstate Talent Forum? And I said, sure, it'd be great. So we got on the phone with Chris Taylor, and I asked Chris, I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, AI in the workforce. And I thought, all right, I know a lot about workforce, but that first thing that you said, AI, I said, I'm not an expert. And it's an honor to be here, but it's an even greater gift when you can speak on something and you can use that opportunity to learn, which is really what I've done over the last 60 plus days. And I will tell you, I'm glad this event got pushed because it gave me more time to learn about AI. So today what I want us to do together is I want to really sort of focus on 3 things. One is I want to set the table around AI, because if you Google AI, if you look at AI online, it is just frankly overwhelming. So I want to set the table a little bit around what is AI, what is it not, and then also talk about, hey, what are the different types of AI, and also the evolution of AI. But then move into really the purpose of the presentation, which is to talk about AI in the workplace. And as we do that, I want us to really focus on the 2 key stakeholders in the workplace, which are workers and companies, because we really have to focus on those 2 specific stakeholders as we look at AI in the workplace. And then I'd like us to end talking a little bit about the path forward. And what is the path forward with AI? So as we set the table, I want to start from a place of trust. So raise your hand if you trust AI. If you trust AI, raise your hand. That's it. If you trust, all right, so if you raise your hand, I want you to stand up. If you raise your hand, I want you to stand up. All right, so we got a few people that stood up. All right, so I'm going to give you a scenario. Just keep standing. Keep standing. We're not done. So all of you have a unique and rare medical condition. You're probably like, where are we going with this? This has nothing to do with workforce. You have a unique medical condition. And for years, there have been clinical trials trying to, discover a drug that will actually treat the medical condition. And fortunately, they find a drug that can treat the medical condition. And what they find is with this drug, in the trials, a few people who took the drug, actually had a heart attack within the first day, just on day one of taking the drug. So to treat that, what they found was, as long as they had all the patients spend the first 48 hours in the hospital just to monitor, they were fine. So that's what we did for a few years with people who had this rare condition. And then the healthcare industry got all the data, which AI needs data. And what they found by looking at the data and blood types was that 56%, and by the way, all of you are in the 56th percentile for this scenario, 56% AI said had a zero risk of a heart attack and didn't need to stay in the hospital for the first 48 hours, all right? So AI said that all of you who are standing up, zero risk of having a heart attack. So sit down if you are going to, even though AI says you have zero risk, will actually, sit down if you will stay in the hospital for 48 hours. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 people remaining standing. And I wanted to set the table around AI from a place of trust, because we are using AI in the workplace, and we're using AI in the workplace for productivity. But from a human mindset standpoint, there's still this mindset and lack of trust around AI. So what is AI? It's systems, but specifically, it's really computers and machines. That it's, the definition says it performs tasks. It basically acts like us, like humans, as relates to intelligence, learning, reasoning, problem solving. But the big thing about AI is that it's human plus AI. And a big part of AI is data. And specifically with data and AI, the data has a scale that is well beyond what people can actually compute. So what is AI not capable of? This is pretty important. So AI is not capable of creativity. It's not original. AI is not capable of judgment. So if you think about AI, AI doesn't have ethics. AI doesn't have a conscience. And the one thing that AI doesn't have, and we'll look at this in just a minute, is common sense. So, how many people in here have teenage kids? Raise your hand. How many of you have told your kids, common sense, nothing good happens after midnight? All right? Nothing good happens after midnight. Well, AI is not going to tell your kids that. because AI doesn't have common sense. It doesn't have common sense. It doesn't have a conscience. So going back to what I just shared earlier, human plus AI, that's how AI works. Human zero is not how AI works. And I think part of the fear, because there is absolutely fear and a lack of trust around AI, is this concept of human zero. So as I was preparing for our time together today, I went out and I Googled the different types of AI, and it really was overwhelming. And there are 3 types of AI, and these are based upon capabilities. 3 types of AI. So you have narrow AI, you have general AI, and super AI. So narrow AI is just that. It's narrow. It's focused on a single or narrow task. Interestingly, narrow AI is referred to as weak AI. So also the other thing that was interesting is the only AI that is actually being utilized in the workforce today is narrow AI. General AI is theoretical. Super AI is also theoretical. And Google believes that by 2028, general AI will actually be used in the workforce, that it will actually be used. And the difference between narrow AI, which is a single narrow task, general AI is really going to be more than one task, but very limited human interaction. So right now, as you think about AI, there's one type of AI that's being used in the workforce, and that's narrow AI. That is also the same AI that we use every day as consumers. And it's broken down specific by function into reactive machine learning and limited memory. So if you think about, reactive machine, great examples are if you play chess with AI, that's a reactive machine AI. Also, streaming recommendations. I love limited memory AI. We just moved from DirecTV to YouTube. And within like a month, I'm like, oh, hey, wait a second. Like, it'll actually tell you all the shows that you watch, and it pops up at the top. That's an example of limited memory AI. And the thing that's interesting about AI is we're using AI at home. We're using AI as consumers, and a lot of times we don't even realize it. But yet, we're not there in the workplace. The other thing that I thought was also interesting is self-driving cars. How many people have actually ridden in a self-driving car? So a few people. We were just out in Austin, Texas, and it was fascinating because you think about Austin, Texas, and Spartanburg, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. How many self-driving cars do we see here in the Upstate? Exactly. In Austin, they're all over the place. They're absolutely all over the place. And it was fascinating because it's like you saw one, and then I kept seeing more and more and more. So the other thing around AI is geography obviously matters. You have different parts of the country that have leaned in more to AI, and a great example of that is self-driving cars. Interestingly, there have been 83 fatalities as of June of 2024 in self-driving cars. Does that seem like a lot? 83 fatalities? So think about that, 83 fatalities, but interestingly, the self-driving cars, there is a 0.06 injury rate, 0.06 injury rate per million miles. For human-driven cars, there is a 0.24 injury rate per million miles. So yes, there are fatalities in self-driving cars, 83. 51 have actually been with the Tesla autopilot, but they are still significantly safer than human-driven cars. And I think what happens a lot of times is because there's this, I want to go back to our medical scenario, there's this fear. and this trust where you think, hey, 83 fatalities seems like a lot, but in comparison, per million miles driven, it's very minimal compared to human-driven cars. So the evolution of AI. When I was thinking about the evolution of AI, I actually wanted to start with literacy. So think back to, thousands of years ago. 4th millennium BC, think about literacy and the evolution of literacy. So many people in our society couldn't read and write. So clergy, elite, could read and write. People would go to a religious service, the clergy would read, they would listen, and then they would go out and maybe farm or go do some type of other work. But then in the 15th century, things changed. And I would tell you the accelerator was Johannes Gutenberg developed the printing press in the 15th century. And as a result of developing the printing press, then all of a sudden, people had so much more access to read and to write. And there was this huge, huge surge in literacy rates back in the 15th century. And as a result of the surge in the literacy rates, there was this incredible renaissance in our society. So if you think about the evolution of AI, think about in terms of literacy. So AI, there's been a lot of information, a lot of attention on AI over the last 10 or 15 years. But AI actually started back in 1950. It actually started with John McCarthy, a computer scientist, who actually in 1955 sort of AI was officially born. But then for a period of time, it was called the AI winter. And really there was a lot of false starts, a lot of failures as a result in AI. And then back in 1997, something interesting happened. IBM developed Deep Chess Blue, which was an IBM program for playing chess. And in 1997, the AI-driven Deep Chess Blue defeated Garry Kasparov, who was the world champion in chess. And that was a breakthrough moment, because what it did is it said, hey, AI is equal to or maybe even better than human intelligence. So as we think about where we are today with AI, in 2024, it started back in 1950, so it hasn't even been 100 years. Think about literacy and where we are today as a society because people can read and write. So I want you to think about where will we be in 15 years, 20 years, not even 100 years as a result, with AI. Just think about that. The part that AI is going to play in our society in 20 years and the evolution. And I think one thing that's really important is we have to have evolution before you can have revolution and renaissance. And literacy is a great example. We have to evolve, and then once we get to that place of evolution, then we will pivot towards that revolution. But I would tell you, AI is still evolving. And I think we see that at home, and a great example of that is Amazon. So you order something on Amazon, and you get this email, and it says, hey, we think you might like this. So an example would be if you look at an urn on Amazon. Let's say you have a little poochie that passes away that you love, and you have the ashes, you want to get an urn, you look at it on Amazon, guess what? You're going to get an email, and it's going to say, hey, we think you might like this. You don't buy urns that often. All right? You don't buy urns that often. This is an example of AI is still evolving, but remember I said it doesn't have judgment. It doesn't have common sense. Now, I would tell you, I love this because I have 3 daughters. and they all have access to the Amazon account. And we all get a lot of emails, but every once in a while I get the like, hey, you might like, and I get to see what my daughters are looking at and thinking about buying on Amazon. So as a dad, it's super helpful to have this AI companion. But also, when I tell you it's still evolving, it is still evolving. So look at that image, because when you look at images online, there is a lot of AI-generated images. Beautiful restaurant, great presence with the waitress, and you look at it and you're like, okay, what's wrong? All right? Remember, AI doesn't have great judgment. There's a reason why we don't trust AI. And you see about it every once in a while. You see it in the media. They'll talk about an AI-generated image. And this is an example. This is an AI-generated image. People love to travel. And a lot of times when we love to travel, we go online and we put things in like, hey, I'm going to go to this location, and what should I do? Well, AI chatbots are using that. So if you were to look on Microsoft Travel and said, hey, I'm going to Ottawa, this is what you're going to get. It's going to tell you to, when you go to Ottawa, to make sure you go to the Ottawa Food Bank as well. So AI is still evolving. It is still evolving, and I think we have to be really careful with sort of how we use AI. And a great example of this is in the legal area. So we work with a lot of large law firms, and it's been interesting. We're actually doing some work with a large law firm for their leader of technology. And a big focus with this law firm is specifically around emerging technologies and innovations in AI. And it has really been fascinating as we've engaged with some of their key attorneys on how they are using AI to really sort of impact their productivity. But the one thing we have to remember is AI relies on data. And who inputs that data? We do. That doesn't mean the data is all correct. All right, sometimes there is false data. It was an interesting case back in, probably about a year ago, where there was an attorney, it was an aviation injury case, and the attorneys brought two cases as sort of a reference point to argue their point, and both the cases were false. And they actually got the information off AI. They just didn't validate that they were real cases. The judge discovered that the cases and what they were using were wrong. They fined the attorneys and the law firm, and it was a huge, huge issue all over the media. So again, AI is evolving, but what is also evolving, the data that AI is being used is evolving, and we're the ones that are inputting and pushing that data. So now let's talk about AI in the workplace. So I'm curious, how many people, I want you to raise your hand, if you are using AI at least once a month at work. Once a month at work, raise your hand. All right. So keep your hand up. You guys you put your hands down really fast. So if you are using AI more than once a month at work, keep your hand up. If you are using AI once a week, keep your hand up. And if you are using AI daily at work, keep your hand up. All right? I mean, get your hands high, because I want to prove a point here. Look around the room. Using AI daily at work. Probably about 20%. Probably about 20%, thank you. So AI in the workplace, two key stakeholders. You have workers and you have companies. And if you think about the stakeholders, I would tell you there's one stakeholder group is leading, one stakeholder group is lagging. How many people believe that companies are leading and workers are lagging? Raise your hand. You're the only person, that's okay. Thank you for leaning in on that. And it is actually the opposite. It is the opposite. Workers are leading. And workers just aren't leading. They are so far out in front of companies. So far out in front of companies. Companies are lagging. And that is something that we're going to talk about in the path forward, because that has got to be sort of cured. And, and the other thing with AI in the workplace is 3 out of 4 knowledge workers. So think about that. 75% are using AI at work. Now, when I asked how many people are using it once a month, almost everyone's hands went up. 3 out of 4, 75%. So Microsoft and LinkedIn, and this is 2024 data. Microsoft and LinkedIn just did a survey of 31,000 people at work globally, and 3 out of 4 are using it, so 75%. But interestingly, and really important, is 46% of that group has just started to use AI over the last 6 to 12 months. So there is this surge in the utilization of AI at the workplace. 2022, the White House did a study and said that large organizations with younger, more educated, and more experienced workers are more likely to adopt AI. So large tech companies. And large tech companies are using AI. Amazon, Google, Apple, they are all using AI. However, from 2022 to 2024, things have changed. You have SMB, small, medium-sized businesses are using it, and we're going to look at some of the demographics, and the demographics are going to surprise you. I thought it would also be interesting to look at what roles and what industries are using AI. Knowing that workers are leading and companies are lagging, as I was doing some research, I just said, hey, I want to look at roles. And so the best way to do that is looking at the survey from LinkedIn. And on the left, you're going to see the percentage of people that reflect AI aptitude or utilization in their background on LinkedIn. So for example, content writers, 33%. I thought it was interesting, entrepreneurs, 19%, operation managers, 17%. And this is the highest percentage by role of workers on LinkedIn that are actually reflecting AI utilization in their background. And then moving over to industries, these are the industries that are also have the greatest number of workers that are reflecting AI aptitude and utilization in their background as well. Entertainment. We work with WWE out of Stamford, Connecticut. And it's fascinating, when you think about what does it take to have that sort of WWE Raw on Friday nights. They have over 300 data analysts at their company. And so much of what they do is driven by data. And they are using AI to really drive programming, to figure out who's wrestling, who's not wrestling. So entertainment is using AI in ways that we can't even imagine to cater to our needs as consumers. And then construction. I thought to myself, how is construction one of the leading industries, but they're using it for safety? They're using it for safety. They're using it with the videos at work sites. They're using it for planning and design. They're also using it for resource management as it relates to demand forecasting for material and labor. And then also they're using it for quality control as well. So this tells you the different types of roles and industries. And now I actually want to think about demographics. So if you think about demographics, think about, we got 4 generations. And on the left side, you got Gen Z, 18 to 28. And then on the right, we've got boomers, 58 plus. So I'm curious, what do you think the difference is, percent difference in AI utilization at work from boomers to Gen Z? How many people think it's greater than 30%? You folks, all right? So this is one thing that was absolutely fascinating to me, which is BYOA, which is bring your own AI to work. So it's like BYOB. And that's what's happening right now in the workforce. The disruption is actually from the workers. Companies are not keeping up, and they are bringing their own AI to work. But specifically around demographics, if we look at that, baby boomers, 58 plus, 73%. Now this is them bringing AI to work, but it tells you they are using AI at work. 73%, 58 plus. And I thought to myself, I'm like, gosh, that seems really high. But then, I was with my dad the other day. He's 83 years old. He's got an Apple Watch. He's using his phone. He's like, he's 5 times a day asking Siri. And I'm like, he's using AI more than I am. And then Gen Z, 85%. But if we look at this across the 4 sort of generations that make up a multi-generational workforce, it ranges from 73 to 85%, which tells us workers are using AI. And when companies aren't providing the AI tools, not providing the AI support, not having an AI strategy, they're figuring it out. They're just bringing their own AI to work. So lastly, with who is using AI, we talked about big companies, large tech companies. There's such a focus on AI with large tech companies. The thing, though, about large tech companies is large companies make up such a small percent of companies in our country. 99.9% of businesses in the U.S. are small businesses, 33.2 million. But 25% are integrating AI. So if we think about why are companies lagging, it has nothing to do with large tech companies. It has to do with Main Street. Main Street USA is made up of small and medium-sized businesses. And small and medium-sized businesses are really lagging as it relates to using AI. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So why are people using it at work? It really comes down to productivity, whether that's process, improving quality of work. I think, Benny, you said it earlier, giving people more time for the art of thinking, which is really a lost art. But why are workers bringing their own AI to work is because it affects them. It really comes back to productivity. It allows people at work to be more productive. So that's why people are using it. And that's where we are right now with the evolution of AI in the workplace. But then why are people not using AI? And not really people, but I want us to think about why are companies not lagging? Why are companies not sponsoring? So one is they might say, hey, we don't think it's applicable to our industry. And that is a false myth. That is a false myth. AI is applicable to every industry. Cost. I think cost is a big thing. When I think about cost, it made me think about one of my favorite pizza places. So in Greenville, if you ever go to Greenville and you want great pizza, go to Miles Pizza. All right? Miles Pizza, it's a great little pizza pub on Pleasantburg. Chet Miles moved from Ohio, and it's like an old-fashioned pizza parlor. Probably about once a month, we get takeout. And I go there, and they have this great little bar, and then you can look right into the kitchen. And every Friday, when we go get pizza, and I look at it back in that kitchen, it looks like a war zone. I mean, there's like flour all over the place. They have tons of people back there working. And I'm thinking to myself going, wow, I would not want to be back in that kitchen right now. And they have tons of people in the kitchen, and they have all these people in the restaurant because it's a super popular place, and they never have enough wait staff. That's one of the reasons why we do takeout versus eating in. And I thought to myself, as I was thinking about AI and researching AI, what if Chet Miles, a small business, could pull the information, the data, out of his point-of-sale system and could actually analyze it and say, on Friday nights, the two most frequently bought pizzas for takeout are meat pizza and veggie. And the most frequently ordered pizza in the restaurant is pineapple, Hawaiian. And that's a great example of, you see the chaos back in the kitchen, but what if they could take their data out of their point-of-sale system and actually get their arms around what pizzas are going to get ordered, and they could, in advance of Friday night, prep those pizzas. They would then probably need less people in the kitchen. And by the way, less people in the kitchen doesn't mean that the jobs are going to be eliminated. And we're going to talk about that from an impact to workers, because I think there's this belief that jobs will be eliminated. Jobs are not going to be eliminated. Jobs are going to be created, and they're going to pivot jobs. So what Chet Miles would do is take a worker or two who's in the kitchen and move them to the front and actually have the right amount of wait staff to service the customers. So this is an example of why small and medium-sized businesses struggle with cost. They just struggle. If you're in a small and medium-sized business on Main Street, you just sort of struggle to keep up. So how can you even get your head around pulling data out of a point-of-sale system, figuring out sort of demand forecasting, and then aligning your workforce with that demand forecasting and customer needs? Part of it is you don't have time, but also right now, because of accessibility, remember we looked at literacy. The accelerator was accessibility. It was the printing press. We haven't hit that point of accessibility right now with AI in the workforce yet, with companies, but we're going to get there. And then also, there's security and data privacy concerns. We saw that when I showed you the legal cases. And then also bias. So we're in the recruiting business. AI is used in recruiting. But remember, AI looks at data. So AI is used to screen and filter candidates. So if candidates have a certain background, then what happens is it can actually compound bias and discrimination if all your candidates fit into a certain box. So it's just a great example of, even in recruiting, how AI can be problematic. There's a lot of companions and platforms. Alexa has been around since 2014. If you haven't spent time with Microsoft Copilot, you need to spend time with Microsoft Copilot. It is fascinating. If you just go on and it walks you through, you can actually click on what type of voice you want to hear. It's like meadow or ocean. It's very soothing. I would encourage you to do it. Also, there's a lot of outcomes from AI. We've talked about how it's evolving and some of the challenges, but there's a lot of outcomes. And I think one of the outcomes that was really fascinating was this top one, which is at Johns Hopkins, through the utilization of AI, they were able to identify and reduce mortality rates for sepsis. Sepsis is one of the lead causes of deaths in hospitals. and they were able to reduce it by 20% using AI. And then NVIDIA. Everyone hears about NVIDIA, the NVIDIA stock, but I think very few people understand what NVIDIA does. And one of the things they do is they detect fraudulent credit card transactions. So I love it. You get a text that says, is this you? Or did you order this? Did you buy this? And that is a result of AI. Where workers are today and where we sort of see the future in AI is Microsoft analyzed users of Office 365. 60% of workers today spend their time in emails, chats, and meeting tasks. 40% of their time in creation, whether that's in PowerPoint or Word. And what we have to accomplish in the workforce with AI moving forward is we have to invert that. We have to invert that so it's 40% spent on task-driven activities and then 60% on thinking. And then here's some impacts to workers. The one thing I just want to emphasize is new jobs. Jobs will not be eliminated. Jobs will be created, and people will be repurposed. And we've seen that in our geography. Think about the textile industry. Think about years ago, 34 years ago, when textiles went away. We figure it out. And I really believe with AI in the workplace, we will figure it out. And then going back to the question I asked before, if you use it once a month, more than once a month, if you use it multiple times a week or daily, there is a life cycle for the worker as relates to AI. From being a skeptic to being a power user. So as we think about the path forward, I want to sort of park on that thought of power users because the accelerator is the power user. And the power user is K-12 education. So if you think about K-12 education, like in the workforce today, workers are out in front, companies are behind. But K-12 education, it's part of the curriculum. I was talking to someone who has a 6-year-old, and they were like, if you saw what my 6-year-old is doing in education and with the utilization of AI, they're like, my 6-year-old knows how to use AI and the technology better than I do. You hear that all the time. AI, the accelerator, is going to be education. It's going to be K-12 and higher education. And the thing about the accelerator is you think about this, 10 years from now, AI in the workforce, people are going to come to the workforce out of K-12 education, out of higher education, they're going to come as power users. And instead of asking how much PTO time I get, they're going to ask, how do you use AI? What type of AI tools do you use? Tell me about your technology. And as a company, if companies don't catch up, what they're going to find is it's going to be hard to retain. So moving forward, it's really less, the path is less about the worker, and it's really more about the company. Companies have got to have a vision. They've got to develop a plan. And then they have to invest and launch. And I will tell you, as I went through this, and the first thing I thought about was our own company. And we are negligent. We do not have a clear vision. We do not have a plan. But as a result of this, and this sort of learning, I'm like, this is something where we can, moving forward, pivot. We can invest, and we can launch. But in order for companies to catch up, we have to move from BYOAI, which is happening, all over the place at every company, and it's got to be one strategy. and one approach. And it's got to be something from a workplace that is sponsored from top down, and then also from a worker who's closest to the customer. And there's got to be one strategy, one approach, and there's got to be alignment. And from a company standpoint, it starts with, what are we doing today? Looking at process and workflows, focusing on data management. In order for AI to be successful in the workplace, it's really about data. And then also training. Companies have got to be intentional and have a plan around training, whether that is third-party sponsored training or doing training in-house. And there, just like for workers, there's a life cycle for companies. And I want you to, as you look at this, I want you to really think about, where's our organization? Are we agnostic? It's like we know things are happening with AI, and we're just agnostic to it. Or we're starting to look at it a little bit, but we're somewhat complacent. We're really not doing much with it. Or are we at that place we're saying we're going to really focus as a company on how AI can impact productivity. But where the revolution will happen at the company level with AI in the workforce is on profitability. When companies can look at AI and say, quantitatively, we are growing our profitability as an organization because of our investment in AI. We can actually quantitatively measure the return on investment with regards to profitability. So we started with mindset, and I wanted to end with mindset. I was out in Montana recently, and when I was out in Montana, I was on a hike, and we had a guide, and over in the pasture, fortunately, a good ways off, there was this massive buffalo. And I was fascinated when I saw the buffalo. It was huge. And the guide said, I was asking questions about the buffalo, and he said, do you know the story about the buffalo? And I said, I don't know the story about the buffalo. And he said, well, he told me a little bit about it. And he said, you really need to look online. There's some pretty interesting stuff. So I did that. So storms out west. Storms out west tend to come over the peak of the mountain. And I was looking at it online, and it actually talked about cows. So cows, when they see the storm, like many other animals in the animal kingdom, when they see the storm coming over the peak, they turn and they run from the storm. They actually run from the storm, and they think they're outrunning the storm. Well, cows are slow. All right? Cows are slow. And the cows then all of a sudden realize, hey, we're not outrunning the storm. We're running with the storm. And we're running with the storm, and they know that because the amount of pain and frustration that they feel from the storm is pretty significant. And it made me think about cows because, people, we're like cows. We see the storm, and we run. And we think we can outrun the storm, but we're not that fast. And the storm catches up, and we end up running with the storm. The buffaloes are one of the most unique animals in the animal kingdom because the buffalo, when they see the storm coming over the peak, they actually turn and run at the storm. And they run at the storm, and they actually run through the storm. Do they experience pain and frustration? Yes, they do. But they minimize the amount of pain and frustration that they experience. So two animals, the buffalo and the cow, it's the same storm. It's the same storm. The difference is how and when you face the storm. And as we think about AI, going back to our opening exercise of how many people trust AI, it's a storm. So as we move forward today and we think about AI in the workforce, I would encourage us together to be the buffalo and run at it. Because I promise you, it's not going anywhere. That storm's going to get bigger and bigger. But we do have a choice as companies, as organizations, how we run out the storm of AI. And if we run at it, we'll find that we will get to the other side, because the belief is 25, 30 years from now, there's going to be two types of companies. Companies in business because they use AI, and then companies out of business because they don't use AI. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak today about AI in the workforce. It has been an absolute pleasure.